Well, hi there. Today I want to show you how to make this terrific bracelet project. It's one that you can make in a variety of colors, any color beads, stones, chips that you might have, and we're simply using this wax linen cord. It's a really fun technique that we use. It results in a bracelet that looks far more complicated than it actually is. When I first saw something similar to this, I thought it was some complex macrame design that I had no idea about. And then once I looked at it more closely, I realized it's just knots. And what makes it look very interesting and complex is that we're alternating focal beads with clusters of smaller beads. And it's these clusters that make it look very interesting. This bracelet I made with some great summery colors, turquoise, great red nuggets, little bits of red, chips, a variety of beads. And these clusters are clusters of 6 with some nice chunky focal beads. Here's a bracelet that I made. Same technique, very different look. This bracelet has smaller focal beads and clusters of only 3 chips and smaller beads in between. So it's got a much more dainty, delicate look. And it's also done with the white twine, which adds to that look. This is one of my favorites. Let me move these out of the way so you can see. I wear this all the time. This one is made with 5 ceramic focal beads, and I didn't alternate them. Like on this one I alternated. I have a couple different kinds of focal beads. This one I used all the same, and again I did clusters of 6 different beads in between. And it just makes a really terrific, very funky looking bracelet. Here's another one with clusters of 3 beads. Because again the focals are smaller, it makes sense to use smaller clusters. So I will be going into detail. I will be telling you how to do all of this in a minute. So stay tuned. One thing to keep in mind if you find a ceramic bead that you really like to use for your bracelet is that often the edges can be sharp. The same with some glass beads. The edges will be sharp. This is actually, I've actually had to remake this bracelet a few times. The first time was because these edges cut right through the twine because they were sharp. So what you'll need to do is use a tool like this, a file, a round file that will help smooth out these edges on the holes. Yeah, and either glass or ceramic beads. One thing to keep in mind when you're making this and choosing beads is that we're not using beading wire. We're going to be using waxed linen cord. And although it's a fairly fine cord, it's much thicker than beading wire. So when you look at your beads, you're going to want to take a look at the hole and make sure that you've got enough hole there to get the cord through. Otherwise you're going to have some problems and some aggravation. So when you buy your beads at the store, this one is probably the smallest hole I would consider. If I sharpen the end of my cord by cutting it at an angle and then rolling it in my fingers, that will actually make it so it'll go through this hole, but I wouldn't want to go any smaller than that or I'm going to have problems. So something to keep in mind. One of the lovely things about waxed twine is that the wax makes the knots very, very secure. You do not have to worry about knots falling out of these bracelets. They are in there. That's one of the drawbacks of waxed twine, is that once you make a knot, it's difficult to undo. It can be done, but it's difficult. So you just want to take your time and take some care in when you're making your bracelet so that you don't have to undo any knots. Another thing you want to do before you get started is measure your wrist. The average size for a bracelet is 7.5 inches, somewhere between 7 and 8 inches. But you want to find a bracelet that fits you comfortably and measure it. And go for that to be the smallest size you'll get on your bracelet. And you can see that this clasp, it's not really a clasp, the slider, the adjustment, which I will show you how to do, and it's a lot easier than it looks. This has about 1 inch to the length of the bracelet. So when you are adding your beads, you're going to want the distance from here all around to here to be about an inch less than what you want your finished size to be. And you can actually make it a little smaller than that, so that if you want it to fit a smaller wrist, you'll be able to, because this wonderful adjustment is here. So let's go ahead and get started on this bracelet. What you'll need for this design are one or more focal beads and a bunch of different smaller beads. Usually somewhere between one or more different types of focal beads. Somewhere between 5 and 7 focals, and somewhere in the vicinity of 3 dozen smaller beads. And like on this bracelet, I chose to use all the same focal bead, and I have 5, and then I have 6 different small beads. On this bracelet, I have a few different focals. I have these turquoise rounds, and then in between them I'm going to put these great red nuggets. And if I still need more room on the ends, I'm just going to put these turquoise tubes. As we build the bracelet, we'll be building it from the center out, so we'll keep taking measurements as we go, and then we can decide when we need to stop the pattern. Like I said, you'll need somewhere around 3 dozen smaller beads. I love chips. I think they just add a great texture and different kind of shape, just some interesting variety to a bracelet or any piece of jewelry. So I'm going to have clusters of 6 in between each of these focals, and 3 of the beads, 3 of those 6 will be chips. So it's always a good idea to just lay out your pattern. It's nice to have something where the beads won't roll, like this piece of velour. And then I've selected these little round beads. They're kind of shiny. I'm going to have 2 of those in each cluster. And then I've picked out these speckled beads just to add a little bit of interest, some different texture, and there'll be just 1 in each cluster because these are a little bigger. So there we are. All of our beads are laid out so that it'll be easy to know where we're at in the pattern. The next thing you'll need to do is cut 3 pieces of waxed linen cord or twine. This is a fairly fine cord. It's not real heavy like a macrame cord or something. It comes on rolls like this. It comes in natural, it comes in black. At my craft store, these are the only colors I've seen, but I'm sure you could find it elsewhere in other shades. 10 yards for $1.50. Not a bad deal. So be generous when you cut these. I cut each of my 3 strands at about 40 inches. A good yard anyways. You want to be sure that you have plenty of length. The stuff is 15 cents a yard, so be generous. It's a royal pain if you run out at the end, if you come up short. So we're going to go ahead and get started by finding the center of these approximately. I think I cut them all pretty much the same length, so I'll just put the ends together and find the center, and we're going to start by making a knot near the center. Just tie a knot. That's it. And then I'm just going to check which side of center is that on. Okay. And then the side that has a little bit more length, I'm going to pick one of my strands, and I'm going to slide on my center focal bead. Not being cooperative, okay. What you could do if it doesn't want to go through the bead is first cut it at an angle another good reason to cut plenty of twine, because you may need to sharpen it a few times, and then roll it in between your fingers to make it nice and tightly packed and round. And that should behave better now. There it goes. So slide that right up to that knot. And now you'll have 2 strands on the back. Make sure you have 3 strands over here, 3 strands over here, and tie another knot. Just a simple overhand knot. That's it. This isn't macrame. There's nothing complicated about it. It's just knotted. And now you have your center bead on. Next, we're going to take the strands one at a time and make our first cluster of 6 small beads. And I'm going to go ahead and roll that, cut it at a point, and I'll start with one of these little ones. These have the smallest holes of all of the beads I chose. They are deemed most likely to give me trouble. There we go. So slide this all the way down to your focal bead. Now, one thing to note, these clusters, the way we make them, the bead is not sitting on the strand like this. Let me show you on this bracelet. The knot is actually tied underneath the bead, and the beads are all sitting proud of the strand. Can you see that? It's sitting up above, so it's knotted along the strand. And the best way I've found to do that is just pull the bead up a little. Okay. Take your end, poke it through. And then I'm going to slide this down closer, but just take your time. Like I said with this twine, it's easy to make knots that stay, not so easy to get them out afterwards. So make sure you have it right where you want it. And see, so instead of it sitting along the strand, strung on, it's sitting like up above it. And that's how we get our clusters. I'll go ahead and do another one. See, this one also needs to be pointed. I'll throw on a chip this time. Now the chips, because they have angles, when you tie them you can decide, do you want it sitting like this or like this? Don't overthink it. Just decide which way you want it and tie it that way. So again, slide this down. Give yourself a little space. Bring your end around to just make a simple tie. Slide that down a little closer. I do like to make the clusters tight. I think they look better. I think the whole, see, that's a little too far down. If you need to make some adjustments, or if you need to remove knots, which I've had to do, it can be done. It requires a tool like this. This is just an awl and some patience. There we go. Just take your time and get it where you want it. Great. And let's see, find the other strand, the one I haven't put a bead on yet, and add another one.